Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing to take a look at the next week's slate, heading down to the SEC as Ole Miss coming off the bye, head on the road to play Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. And Dale, I'll say this right now, this Ole Miss team coming off a bye, getting some weapons on the offensive side of the ball healthy. This Ole Miss offense has been good. Top 15 team in the country in points per game. I don't think we've seen the full extent of what Lane Kiffin, Jackson Dart have to offer. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support y'all have shown for all of these game breakdowns, it truly does mean a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, though, let us know in the comments section your game predictions, picks, keys to the matchup. We'll chop it up there. That's the best part about doing this. They're going to give you the T-box here. Ole Miss heading on the road. Night game in Jordan-Hare Stadium. How we feeling here?
Yeah, and honestly, the one thing I think you got to be really excited for if you're Ole Miss is even with the injuries and having two wide receivers essentially in Harris and Zachariah Franklin, or Zachary Franklin, I should say, who really haven't been themselves or had the opportunity to by health. They've hung in this season and they're playing well, and they've put themselves in a position to win the SEC West if things shake out and Alabama takes another loss.
And the most impressive part about this Ole Miss team, I think, and we'll take a deeper dive into this offense, is they've been winning games from their defense as well. Like, you go back and watch the film of this Arkansas game, this Ole Miss offense struggled mightily in the first half. Who came to save the day? The Ole Miss defense forcing a turnover, getting the ball inside the 5. This Ole Miss defense this year just looks bigger, stronger, faster. It looks like an SEC defense, and they're winning games because of their defense. And you haven't really said that about this Lane Kiffin team. We'll start on the Ole Miss offensive side of the ball, going up against an Auburn defense that I think is good. The numbers don't show it as much because the Auburn offense just can't stay on the field, consistently putting them in bad spots. Digging into this Ole Miss offense, though, Dale, the story of the last couple of weeks, the run game, the offensive line really starting to cook here.
Yeah, in that unit, especially the offensive line, and that was probably more of the reason the run game really couldn't take off is that unit wasn't playing good for the first 4 or 5 weeks or so until really it got to LSU. That's when it felt like they put a whole game together of really consistent football the way you want to see, and then they were able to do some good things too against Arkansas in terms of running the football. And that's, again, as much as like you think Lincoln or Kiffin, you think air raid, I think it helps him so much when he can put the ball on the ground. And you saw
this is a team. This is an Ole Miss team that wants to run the ball. Like everyone, the misconception around this Ole Miss team is they don't run the football. They run the football 55% of the time. Like, they run the football a lot, and it's a part of their offense. We panicked a little bit when we watched that Tulane game, and they weren't dominating in the trenches like we expected them to. They're starting to figure it out. You take a look at Quinshon Judkins. He's starting to get going. The bigger story for me, Ulysses Bentley emerging as a serious weapon in the backfield, averaging, don't look now, 7.4 yards per carry. And I think it's massive. Judkins is the guy. He's the guy that Auburn or Ole Miss wants to ride. But when you have a running back like Bentley that can come in, keep Judkins fresh, and give you kind of that same level of explosiveness, that's really what makes it special, especially when you're Ole Miss and you want to run so many plays. Having two running backs that you feel really comfortable toting the rock, that's going to be a massive storyline for Ole Miss the second half of the season here.
Yeah, and then just getting into this game specifically, I think the one thing you're really going to get to see is how good these wide receivers are, because they're going to cook. In terms of what Auburn does really well, this secondary is elite, I think, for Auburn, or at least bordering on it, if not.
I think it's the best unit on this defense.
So they've been playing really well, and again, we've been talking about it, obviously, is you just haven't seen a full arsenal of what Ole Miss has in the passing attack healthy, and that's what I'm looking for. Like, can Trey Harris, can Zachary Franklin make their mark on this season and be like, no, look, we're the top dogs in the SEC. This unit is as good as LSU, is as good as some of these other Texas A&M units that are getting a lot of the hype.
And I think it certainly is an argument. And the nice thing is that guys like Jordan Watkins, Dayton Wade have stepped up in those absences. I don't even shout out Caden Prescorn starting to get right. True freshman Aiden Williams. Like, there's a lot of weapons in this Ole Miss team. Flipping
I think Trey Harris and Zachary Franklin should give them much more versatility. I mean, Wade and the other guys, like, they're good athletes and they're good with the ball in their hands. But I don't think in just pure wide receiver, and it's not a knock on those two, because it's just that Zachary Franklin and Trey Harris are awesome. But those two are probably just more developed wide receivers.
It's like what we had that conversation, like the basketball court. Like you got your big bodies in Franklin and Trey Harris. Then you got your separators, your guys that can work with the football in their hands. Although Trey Harris is a dog with the football.
Yeah, that's the thing. They both do that. They're both just complete, really bona fide star wide receivers. And the other two are kind of developing maybe into that, but they're just not quite at the level of Harrison.
A peak, that's probably fair. And you guys know how I feel about Zachary Franklin. Like peak Zachary Franklin from what I watched at UTSA, like that dude is extremely, extremely special. Flipping sides here, Dill, Auburn's offense, we'll start there. It just hasn't really found anything going. And I think you can put a lot on Peyton Thorne, quite frankly, because I think this run game, although the numbers don't show it, it's a lot better than you think. It's just this offense is so one-dimensional. Defenses don't fear the kind of attacking that deeper third, so they're loading the box. It's really hard to establish that run game. But you look at the quarterback play. I mean, 52% completion percentage for Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford combined. When you're that one-dimensional in the SEC, it's really hard to win football games.
Yeah, and honestly, at this point for Auburn, I think you kind of know you're obviously not going to win an SEC championship or be competitive in that way because, again, if your quarterbacks are playing the way Ashford and Thorne are playing, they're not really giving you enough of a chance. And, again, you see moments from the offensive line, and some of these young skill guys are emerging. I thought Camden Brown is a guy I want to see used more. At this point, you know he's probably going to be more in the future mix and in the plans. Let him rip. Jay Fair made a couple of really good plays against LSU. This to me, it's
Jeremiah Cobb. I throw Jeremiah Cobb in there, dude. True freshman running back. And that's kind of Auburn fans that we talked about in the offseason. Like this Auburn team can be solid this year. We said that. Now, what you're really looking for is what the future looks like. Hugh Freeze crushing it on the recruiting trail. Guys like Jeremiah Cobb, Camden Brown, Jay Fair, the pieces that'll still be here a year or two from now. That's who you're looking for really to start cooking. They're going to have a challenge on their hands, though, because, again, this Ole Miss team, it plays some defense this year, and it starts with the front seven. They get after the passer, sacking the quarterback. They're doing some prep here. 9.2% of the time. That's top 20 in the country against the run. Only 3.2 yards per carry. That's 23rd in the country. We are not used to saying Ole Miss in their front seven are dogs, but that's exactly what you see from this Ole Miss defense. This is a very, very good defense.
I guess the way I'd sum it up is this is an SEC defense. Now it's got the physicality of an SEC defense. It's got the size of it. And they're playing games where, again, is their defense the engine of this unit or team? It probably won't be if they really reach their peak, but it's been good enough to win them football games and not be the reason they lose. And that's been the big thing that I think Lane Kiffin and this Ole Miss team has kind of had to fight with for 3 or 4 years now, is this defense has been such a liability at times that they just, as good as their offenses were, it didn't matter. This defense now, I mean, they're coming like they're attached to they're part of the reason they'll win games.
100. I mean, I think they probably don't win that football game with an Ole Miss defense from 2 years ago against Arkansas, because I think they go down early when that Ole Miss offense sputters. This defense can now pick up the offense and play a little bit more complimentary football. So deep on the front seven, which again, depth. Lane Kiffin, couple transfer portal cycles. He's starting to get it going on the recruiting trail. Suntarine Perkins, guys like that. The depth is there where it just wasn't there in the past. Again, I think that's why this Ole Miss defense is so special. And they got some dudes in the back end who I think can play. Guys like John Sanders, like they hit on a lot of transfer portal targets, and those guys are playing SEC level football for them on the defensive side of the ball. Dill, getting to the pick here. Ole Miss, road favorite, 6.5 points. Who are you rocking with here?
I think Auburn's going to fight this team here. And I like Ole Miss. Frankly, just a little bit of like some gambling thing is I don't see why this line is under a touchdown. Makes me think Vegas knows something. And one thing I do know is Jordan Hare has been a minefield for teams. It's a really hard place to play. I think the Auburn fans are going to be rocking. And this is like, these are the type of games I think you want to get 1 or 2 of these if you're Auburn this year. Again, probably didn't think you were going to win a national title, but want to be competitive in a game like this. I think the young guys are coming along enough on offense. Maybe they'll make a couple plays. And then I just think this defense is tough. I think the secondary is really good. And if they can just be respectable up front and get a little bit of a pass rush, which we haven't necessarily seen yet, I think they can be fine and keep this team in this game.
You said it's a trap line. I'll walk right in the trap. I do it all the time. I'm going to do it here. Ole Miss, 6.5 points. They're going to cover this number. And I just think one, like you take a look at both of these offenses, you say who is going to score, who's going to outscore who. It's this Ole Miss offense. I really, really like this defense. And right now, Auburn, there's just not much that I've seen on the football field where I can get behind them. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss, defense travels. I think that's the difference here. They're going to have a good game. Defense is going to pick them up. Give me Ole Miss to cover the 6.5 points. I am high on this Ole Miss team, especially about what you're going to see in the second half, getting those guys back from injury. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.